I need you to listen very carefully to me. Donald Trump is going to use Chicago as an example to invoke the Insurrection Act and declare martial law. I'm being 100% serious in this assessment. Why do I say that? Look at what's happening in Chicago. We're having pastors maced by cosplaying masked commandos. People are angry, and he's going to use Chicago as a trial run for martial law. It is what it is. Now, what I don't think is going to happen, I don't think he's going to declare martial law nationwide, because as many people have pointed out, month after month on this app, it's incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to enforce nationally. We're just too big of a country for that to happen. What I think is the more likely scenario, and this is just my personal opinion and assessment, is that the administration is going to continue to target blue cities, send people into Chicago, Portland, LA, any other blue city he has mentioned, and have his folks, the cosplay folks, cause trouble, get people angry. And then he's going to impose martial law there. And what people need to remember is that the majority of Americans live in large metro areas, maybe not directly in the city, but if you're going to impose martial law in the Chicago metro area, that's going to encompass a large portion of that population. The same thing goes if it's LA or New York or Boston. So a large portion of the American population could potentially fall under martial law. But again, this is my personal opinion, and I need you to pay attention.
What the hell is going on in this country, people? We have a president who is unhinged, untethered to reality, and literally insane. Now Trump is saying that furloughed workers, government workers like air traffic controllers, will not receive back pay. Like, that is illegal. Legally, they get their back pay. There is a law for that to protect these workers. Now, on top of that, Stephen Miller did an interview on CNN saying that Trump has plenary authority. That means absolute and unrestricted power to deal with any specific issue. So the only way Trump gets plenary authority is through the Insurrection Act. And that just indicates they are planning to invoke this. Trump even mentioned it yesterday that he would consider it. Check this out.
What?
The Insurrection Act, under what conditions or terms would you?
Well, I'd do it if it was necessary. So far it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up, sure, I'd do that.
The writing is on the wall. They're not even hiding it. And I think what they'll start with is do this city by city. Martial law, Insurrection Act, city by city. Here is how he describes Portland, Oregon.
But Portland is on fire. Portland's been on fire for years, and not so much saving it. We have to save something else, because I think that's all insurrection. I really think that's really criminal insurrection.
Now here's what the chief of police in Portland, Oregon has to say about it all.
But I just want to emphasize, this is one city block. City of Portland is about 145 square miles. This is one city block. And even the events that are happening down there do not rise to the level of attention that they are receiving. These, 30-second, 20-second, 15-second clips that are brought in from months ago or maybe even years ago. We've seen Portland portrayed through the events of the lens of 20 and 21. And what's actually happening in the response that we're seeing both from Portlanders and from the Portland Police Bureau is not in line with that national narrative.
Now, who do you believe? The chief of police of Portland, Oregon, or President Trump, who is a constant pathological liar? Let me know in the comments. Like, share, spread the word, let everyone know. Follow, subscribe, and I'll see you back here for the 411.
He's going to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. Yes. That's where this has been headed ever since Todd Blanche went down to meet with Maxwell at the Max Security Prison in Tallahassee. It was Maxwell's legal team that reached out to the White House and said, I can completely pull the pin on this grenade, right? And they were like, oh no, please don't. We'll pardon you. And she says, awesome. And then they say, yeah, we can't do it right away. As a gesture of good faith to keep you from talking, we'll send you to a minimum security situation in Texas where you can go to fucking yoga class. And she was like, okay. She has a mountain of evidence that can ruin Trump and a ton of other powerful people. This is always go back to who does Trump own? Who does Trump not own? That's it. That's Trump's universe. Okay. I most likely will be morally indefensible if he were to pardon Maxwell. There is no way that any MAGA can rightfully stand up and say this pardon is justified. They've justified the pardons of the January 6ers. This is on a different level. Okay. But J.D. Vance, Peter Thiel, Rupert Murdoch, a bunch of executives at Fox News, they all met at Rupert Murdoch's ranch in Montana to discuss the post-Trump era, where we have President Vance and his vice presidential nominee, Erica Kirk, or whoever the fuck. They're interchangeable. They don't mind if Trump goes down because of this. Whether it's his health or whether it's Ghislaine Maxwell, they've already planned for this. Oh, yes. So Ghislaine Maxwell is going to be pardoned. And we're all going to figure out what kind of a country do we live in if that happens. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada, comes to the White House, and Donald Trump and him have more discussions on trade. Back in August, Donald increased the tariffs to 35% to Canada. And if you remember when Mark Carney first got voted in, he said he was going to stand up to Donald Trump. Well, if you look at the engagement, they both seem to have a lot of respect for each other.
Because, we have natural conflict. We also have mutual love. We have great love for each other. I love this. I love Canada and the people of Canada. And Mark feels the same way about here.
You kindly hosted me and some of my colleagues a few months ago, and I said at the time, you are a transformative president. And since then, the transformation in the economy, unprecedented commitments of NATO partners to defense spending, peace from India, Pakistan through to Azerbaijan, Armenia, disabling Iran as a force of terror.
Some of the Canadians are putting pressure on Mark Carney, and they suggest that he's walked away empty-handed. But he also says that he's going to wait to get the right deal for Canada.
In other countries, they're very far away, and there's no problem. You can compete and you can do. We don't like to compete because we sort of hurt each other when we compete. And so we have a natural conflict. It's a natural business conflict. Nothing wrong with it. And I think we've come a long way over the last few months, actually, in terms of that relationship.
And you can see the meeting was very light-hearted because there was a lot of jokes between each other.
I think Canada, let me put it this way, I can tell you this because I deal with lots of leaders all over the world. He is a world-class leader. He's a man that knows what he wants. He's a good man. He does a great job, and he's a tough negotiator.
So what's holding things up? If he's a great man and you want to do a deal with Canada, why aren't you?
Because I want to be a great man, too.
All of this will eventually lead to the two countries merging together, and even Donald Trump makes a little joke about it.
And I'm running out of time, but this is, in many respects, the most important.
The merger of Canada and the United States.
That wasn't where I was going. On this...
But what it's also doing is showing that there is these strong relationships building all around the world. We got the peace agreement announced in the Middle East, and you're now seeing the neighbouring countries starting to form the partnership with each other.
For the first time in decades, hundreds of years, thousands of years, this prospect of peace that you've made possible, Canada stands foursquare behind those efforts, and we'll do whatever we can to support
Very
them.
nice.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
As much as people want the disagreements and fights and division, that's never going to happen in a new world, and they're slowly showing us this all over.
All right, what Donald Trump just did in his speech at the Naval Academy was not only unpresidential, it was reckless. He demeaned Democrats in front of soldiers that he commands. I'll take a look at this video, I'll show you. He said, we have to take care of this little gnat on our shoulder called the Democrats. They want to give all our monies to illegal aliens and who pour into the country. I never want to hear again about Democrats being responsible for divisive political rhetoric. I never want to hear it ever again. This is the commander-in-chief speaking behind the seal of the presidency. To sailors, he will command as their commanding officer. And he is degrading Democrats. He's saying we have to take care of this gnat. What do you mean take care of them? By the way, many of the soldiers you're speaking to are Democrats because Democrats serve in the armed forces too. For a president to demean Americans in front of soldiers is not only unpresidential, it's unpatriotic. And I challenge anybody, if you think this was fine, show me one clip of Joe Biden or Barack Obama or Bill Clinton or any Democrat up until literally the 1940s who has demeaned American citizens while speaking to soldiers they command. This is a disgusting example of President Trump's not only unfitness to serve, but his lack of patriotism as commander-in-chief and the president. Take a look.
But we have to take care of this little gnat that's on our shoulder called the Democrats. They want to give all of our money to illegal aliens that pour into the country.
Stephen Miller just said something so horrifying while on CNN that he literally shocked himself into silence. Watch this.
I would note the administration won an identical case in the Ninth Circuit just a few months ago with respect to the federalizing of the California National Guard. Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority. Stephen? Stephen? Hey, Stephen, can you hear me?
For those of you unfamiliar, plenary authority or plenary power means power that is absolute. It's power that is not subject to any checks or balances at all. It's a legal term. So, for example, in the United States, the president of the United States has plenary authority over presidential pardons. There is no one in the United States that can tell any president who they can or cannot grant a federal presidential pardon to, right? Not Congress, not the Supreme Court, no one. The president does not have plenary authority over the military because the president cannot just declare wars wherever he wants. The president cannot just deploy the military en masse and no one at all ever check him on that. That is not a plenary authority that any president has, including the current one. So the fact that Stephen Miller admitted this, you could see on his face, he knew he had up by saying that part out loud. That was very much saying the quiet part out loud, because that means that behind closed doors, the White House sees itself as having dictatorial levels of power. Having a leader with plenary authority across the board, that's called having a king. This is a very, very scary mask-off moment for our country, y'all. But while Stephen Miller said the quiet part out loud on CNN, if you were not watching that interview live, you would have no way of knowing that he said that, because by the time CNN put it up online, they'd edited that part out entirely. So not only do we have a White House that is now saying out loud that they think their power is absolute, we have news platforms that are intentionally obscuring that fact from their audiences. This is horrifying. In fact, apologies if this video is shaking. I am on a road trip at the moment and having to film this in my car, and my hands are literally shaking from how insane this is. So please help me get this information out to folks so that, one, they know that it was said in the first place, and two, they know why it is so scary and what plenary authority means. So please interact with this video in all the ways possible, especially please repost it and let it play through for a second time in full. That gives us the best shot of getting this information out to folks. Thanks, y'all.
This right here is a real video that Donald Trump know that many of the Trump supporters probably found that hilarious. When your IQ is room temperature, things like this can easily amuse you. But realistically, it should concern every American that the Trump administration is, number one, treating people like this, but also number two, bragging about it. One of the main goals of wannabe dictators throughout history has been to dehumanize the opposition, make them seem subhuman, less than them. And that's exactly what that video is trying to accomplish. That's also exactly what Donald Trump is trying to do when he calls Democrats gnats that we have to take care of, or when he's sending the National Guard into blue cities simply because he doesn't like them. If you're an American, you're watching stuff like this and you're not alarmed, you gotta wake up.
So I've been watching Pam Bondi this morning testify in front of Congress about the e-files, and she just went blank. She was asked a direct question by Senator Whitehouse. He asked her about these alleged photos that exist between the current president of the United States and E with either young girls or young women who are barely dressed. And she just went blank. He asked her if these photos existed, if she has seen them in the files, or if they're just not in the files. And at first she's like, did you ask Merrick Garland this? Did you ask anybody else this? Did you ask Kash Patel this? And he's like, I'm asking you. I'm asking you, have you seen these photos? And she just went blank. She just stared off until he moved on to the next question. It's really bizarre, and I think it tells us everything we need to know about what she's seen in those files and what she's tried to remove. So I'll be watching her testimony for the rest of the day, but I'm sure there's going to be more blank stares.
Did the FBI find those photographs that have been discussed publicly by a witness who claimed Jeffrey Epstein showed them to him? You don't know anything about that. Okay?
What is Pam Bondi refusing to answer a question about photos that Michael Wolff says that Jeffrey Epstein showed him of two topless girls of an uncertain age sitting on Donald Trump's lap, and in another photo, a few of these girls of uncertain age laughing and pointing at what? A stain on Donald Trump's pants. Those photos, if they ever came to light that Senator Whitehouse was asking about, may or may not provide proof that Donald Trump was engaged in abuse of underage girls, but they would be embarrassing. And what was Pam Bondi's response to that question? Absolute silence. I gotta be honest, we don't know for certain whether Donald Trump was engaged in criminal activity with underage girls, but we do know that Jeffrey Epstein and many of his friends were, and we know that Donald Trump, the Republican Party, including Pam Bondi, are trying to cover it up. Most of the people engaged in this cover-up have kids. Most of them probably have daughters. Would they want their daughters to have done to them what Jeffrey Epstein and his friends did to those girls? My view is that the number one way you can judge the quality of a culture, number one way, is how that culture treats its children. Our children are our future. That's a cliche. It's a cliche because it's true. Do we nurture our young? Do we feed our young well? Do we keep our young healthy? Do we educate our young well? And yeah, do we keep them away from predators? The people in charge of this country right now, we elected them, are taking away food from kids. They really are. Taking away their health care, trying to replace their education with right-wing propaganda, and yeah, covering up for those who prey on our kids. We are failing our children in every possible way. And if you voted for that and you continue to support that, you know what? I have nothing but contempt for you.
Here's your daily reminder that the House could be in session right now if the Republicans wouldn't be trying to cut millions of people off of health insurance or pricing them out of the ACA marketplace. On top of that, they don't want to bring it to session because then they would have to swear in the new House member who just got elected during the special election, who would be the 218th vote for the discharge petition to release the files. And the estate of Epstein just released his financial records to the House Oversight Committee. So if you're wondering why the government is shut down, let's put on our critical thinking caps and remember that the Republicans have the House and the Senate. Okay? We have to stop blaming the Democrats. We have to. And we need to look at the big picture. Okay? Anyway, that was just your daily reminder. Have a good day.
Well, well, well. Baby, we've got them in a fucking corner. And I'm talking about Orange Daddy. Yes, I am, and I can prove to you that I know that the orange dude is shaking in his shit today, and so is the Red Hat crew over the government shutdown plan. Even though he likes to take to his not-so-true socials to say that he's happy about the shutdown today because it's going to allow him to get his way, I can prove to you that he is a cowardice bully and he don't know what to do. Because supposedly, a memo was accidentally leaked, baby. Let's talk about it, shall we? And you're going to want to share this video expeditiously with any of those federal employees who have been furloughed today. Don't bend the knee his fucking way. Listen to what I have to say. You see, apparently the current administration leaked a memo that was floating around White House town that had to do with the federal employees and their back pay and the idea that maybe they should not get their back pay. Well, it just so happens to be the law, dear. They will get their back pay. Don't you worry about that today, no matter how much people try to convince you that the current regime is not following the law does not matter to them, and you're not going to get paid. Do not listen to that. This is another cowardice bully play. You will get your back pay. You see what he's trying to do, because the orange dude is really, really not happy with the government shutdown, baby. No matter what he tries to say, he's not happy. He's not getting his way. And rich men in this country are watching their money go away over the shutdown play. Yes, indeed. He actually needs the government open to get some of the things that he needs through expeditiously, dear. But there's also that part up there where they need the government to shut down so they can protect the orange clown from the files and all of that. Not just the orange clown, a whole lot of people that are close to him too, and a whole lot of billionaires, boo. So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place, you could say, where they need the government open today, but they also need the government shut down in a big way. And they don't know what to do, so they've reached into their bully pocket to once again threaten you. They're hoping that the furloughed federal employee will think that they're not going to receive any money, and they'll start to make the calls, baby, to the offices of the Democrat, begging them to bend the knee for the orange fool so that they can have their money. That's what he's hoping you'll do when he issued that accidentally leaked threat, baby. He wants you out here harassing your Democratic representatives in the House and in the Senate, begging them to get on the same page as the Red Hat crew and open the government back up expeditiously for the orange fool. But that's not what we're going to do. At all. Because we don't bend to a fucking cowardice bully. He showed his cards, and he shows them every day if you're bright enough to see that he's playing old maid. Because that's about as smart as he is, dear. A game of old maid, and I don't even think he has it together up there today to even play old maid. But either way, do not buy that bullshit. He's running out of cards, baby, and he don't know what to do but to threaten people. And he's going to start threatening those in the Red Hat crew too. And we know how that's going to work out for the orange dude. Too bad they didn't understand how a narcissist likes to play. Ain't nobody his friend on any fucking day. So let the infighting begin. Okay? I swear, some of you jump so quick to panic. It's not time to panic, dear. It's time to stay calm and sit back and watch the orange clown fucking go down.
I watched Trump's meeting with Carney today, so you don't have to, and here's my overview, and let me just tell you right now, you're going to want to go ahead and just touch some grass before I start this. Everything I'm going to tell you, he said in less than 35 minutes, and he also mentioned Biden 3 times in that 35 minutes. Regarding Palestine, he says, depending on how you count, it could be 3,000 years or it could be 500 years, and he says the proposal he put forward is going to apply to more than the Gaza situation, and then this is a direct quote, literally every country in the world has supported the plan. Right at the beginning, too, he just casually suggests to the Prime Minister of Canada that Canada should just join the U.S. They literally spoke for less than 3 minutes, and then Trump goes, okay, any questions? And I literally put in my notes, here we go. He gets asked whether federal workers should receive back pay from the shutdown. He says that Democrats have put people in a very bad position. He also says there are some people who deserve to be taken care of, and we're going to take care of them. And there are others who don't deserve to be taken care of, and we're going to take care of them in a different way. Then later he's asked, literally, this is the law that you have to back pay them. And he says this direct quote, I follow the law, and what the law says is correct. I follow the law. He has 34 felonies. He says multiple times that there is natural conflict between the US and Canada, and he says the reason for that is they want steel, we want steel. They want car companies, we want car companies. Carney later says that it's competition, which is how I would also describe that. A reporter brings up the fact that Canadians aren't coming into the US anymore. There's been a 23% reduction, and says, what are you going to do about that? And he says, Americans don't want cars made in Canada. So he definitely did not understand the question. He mentions the $17 trillion in investment again, and then says that that was actually months ago and it's probably much higher now. I'm just going to remind you on whitehouse.gov, it still shows 8.8 trillion, and I fact checked that number and shown that it's complete BS. He then says that Biden is the worst president in the history of America. And then he says that the $17 trillion is really going to be 21, 22 trillion when everything's all added up. And he says if you did $1 trillion in a year, that's pretty good. And we're going to do over 20 trillion. And everything I just told you was also an answer to the question, what are you going to do about Canadians not wanting to travel into the US? He says there's been 50 murders in Chicago over the last 5, 6, 7 months. He does not clarify whether it was 5, 6, or 7 months. He then says that the mayor of Chicago has a 4% approval rating. He says that when he got to DC, it was a raging hellhole. His exact words, a raging hellhole, and now there is no crime. And then he mentions open borders again that Joe Biden had, and says that open borders affected Canada as well. Because apparently, I guess people are coming in from Mexico, going all the way through the US without ever being intercepted or anything, and then going into Canada with also not being intercepted when crossing the border. He says again that for 4 months, no one has entered this country illegally. He doesn't say it came from a left group this time, but I read an article on whitehouse.gov again this morning that said that 9,000 people per month are entering the country illegally. So he again is directly contradicting what is on whitehouse.gov. He said this before, but he says the drugs coming in by boat, they call them water drugs, and now there's not any more boats left in the ocean because he keeps taking them out. He also says that 100,000 Americans have been saved by a result of him taking out those boats, and that actually tracks because he says that 25,000 are saved each time he extrajudicially kills people on a boat, and he said last time he spoke that he's taken out 4 of the boats. So at least there's some math he's able to do correctly. This is just what happens when this man speaks without a teleprompter. It just gets bonkers immediately. He says Chicago is a great city, but you can't have a great city if you have murders, and they have murders. He also gives this direct quote, which is pretty close to that one. He says, to have a great country, you can't have crime. And we don't have crime. We have cities where there is tremendous crime. Direct quote. Because every accusation is an admission, he says that Democrats are like insurrectionists. He also then is talking about the big beautiful bill and says it was such a great bill that we never need another bill ever. I guess for anything. A reporter asked Carney, why is it that the EU and the UK have been able to reduce the tariffs that Trump initially put on, but you've been unable to? And he immediately jumps in and says, it's because they're located literally right next to us. He forgets that he signed the USMCA in his first term. He also will later give a quote in the speech that makes it very clear that he forgets that he was president from 2017 to 2021. I'm going to remind you of 2 things before I go over this section because it doesn't make any sense the way he says this, but it is what he says, so I do have to cover it. 1, a tariff is paid by the citizens of the country who pay the tariff. And 2, anything over a 100% tariff, if they work the way Donald Trump says, makes absolutely no sense. Because if another country was paying a tariff and you put that tariff at 100%, say that country was trying to sell a $10,000 car into the US. In order to do that, they would have to pay the US government $10,000 in order to sell that car for $10,000 in the US, which would mean there is literally no way they could ever make any money. Okay, we'll go into what he said. He says when looking at agricultural products into Canada that they have tariffs of 250, 300, and even 401%. He then also says that we have been charged tariffs, which as we just went over is completely untrue. And he says that we are the king of being screwed by tariffs. He then also incorrectly states that almost every country charged the US and we didn't charge them because we were led by stupid people. And then he blames past presidents and past business leaders. He was both a past president and a past business leader. He just completely forgets that he was president. And then he says that the US has been paying trillions and trillions of dollars and other countries have been paying nothing because, again, he does not understand how a tariff works. He makes a claim that before he started his second term, the U.S. was not allowed to sell cars in Europe, and the U.S. was also not allowed to sell agricultural products in Europe, but now they totally can. He also says that he claims that Germany had 0 cars imported from the U.S. I'm just going to remind you, it was 20,000 plus cars in 2023 from the U.S. to Germany. He also claims that Japan had 0 cars come in from the U.S. It was 29,000 in 2023. He claims that Democrats want open borders, men and women's sports. He tries to say transgender for everyone, but says transgender from everybody, which is weird. And then he says that Democrats want windmills all over the place. And he says if we kept that up for the next couple of years, we probably wouldn't have a country anymore. We're at the 6-minute mark, so I'm just going to take the opportunity right now to remind you that he is doing all of this, complaining about his own personal grievances, while he is sitting next to the Prime Minister of Canada. He is sitting next to another world leader and complaining about his own personal grievances. Okay, he says that Democrats not voting to open up the government is like a kamikaze attack. He doesn't really explain how. He says that tens of millions of people have been killed in the Middle East, but he does not give a time frame for that, so I'm guessing he's talking about somewhere in the 500 to 3,000 years of fighting that he was talking about before. Again, I don't know. He's not very specific with his numbers, so it's just tens of millions, which in my opinion is at least 20 million, because it's not 10 million, it's tens of millions. But again, this is just me using logic, and I know that that doesn't work when trying to decipher what this man is saying. But you are welcome for the translation I'm giving you. He says Canada is doing much better, but that the fentanyl crisis will never be over. Just never. And then the next thing he says is that the delays at airports are Democrat delays. He calls Jasmine Crockett a low IQ individual, which is just hilarious. He then says that AOC has no right to negotiate on this funding bill at all. He then says that Republicans have great people and great policy. And then he says, quote, "We're not going to take your child away and change the sex of your child." He literally doesn't know the difference between sex and gender. Guys, I know you're just not going to believe this one, but he says that a year ago we were a dead country and now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. And he says that Mark Carney hasn't told him that yet, but he hopes that he will soon. He claims again that over $20 trillion of investment has come into the U.S. since he's been in office. Since he's been in office, he's claimed 13 trillion, 15 trillion, 16 trillion, 17 trillion. Now 20, 21, and 22 trillion were all said during this speech. After he says that due to the shutdown, they're going to permanently close a bunch of programs, but he can't tell you which ones, but he can let you know in 4 or 5 days, and that Russell Vogt is figuring out which ones. You remember Russell Vogt, the one he just put out a tweet just a couple days ago saying Russell Vogt of Project 2025 fame, the same Russell Vogt who was the director of the Office of Management and Budget, not just in this administration, but in his previous administration, when he claimed the entire time he knew nothing about Project 2025. That Russell Vogt. Also on that note, he says that they're going to be able to cut billions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse, even though they found none when they did the entire Doge thing. And he says that all of that is being handed to him by Chuck Schumer on a silver platter. And then he says that there is no leadership in the U.S. And then he says that he's getting calls from Democrats that he's never heard from before, and that it reminds him of Somalia. That last bit about Somalia is especially weird because he's using it to reference Ilhan Omar when he says these Democrats who I have no idea who they are keep calling me, when he has every single opportunity mentioned Ilhan Omar. He definitely knows who she is, and he just wants to disparage her by saying that she's a Somalian refugee, which she is. And he, again, knows exactly who she is. That's why he's referencing her yet again, and even her country of origin. And finally, and this is actually the last thing he says, if Mark Carney is a great man and you guys are such good friends, how come you haven't made a deal? And Trump just goes, I want to be a great man too. He also wants to get into heaven. Don't forget about that. Wow, 10%ers. That was a doozy, wasn't it? Aren't you glad you took my advice and went and touched grass right at the beginning before I said anything? And for those of you who didn't, aren't you now going to take my advice in the future that maybe you should go touch some grass or pour yourself a stiff drink before you listen to me talk? Man, all of that, again, 35 minutes was all it took for him to say that. And Carney did talk for a little bit about that. So really, I have him at like 32 minutes of talking. And then if you take out reporters talking too, he said all of that in like 30 minutes of actual speech. Pretty wild, but I got it down to just over 9 minutes for you, and we're about to hit 10. So glad you were here. I appreciate you being here. I always appreciate everyone who stays and listens to what I have to say. And trust me, because I am not lying to you, I promise.